Hello, welcome everybody. I'm Annie, and I'm a social justice major and an Edge Fellow here at Dominican. Congratulations for making it to the end of the semester. I hope everyone's been doing well on their studying or just hanging in there. I'll start the symposium with a reflection of my own service learning experience and then pass the mic on to our other presenters. So, presenters, please be ready to say your piece once I call your names. So, for me, this semester, my service learning class was English with Professor Davis. I have been with the Presente program at the Multicultural Center of Marin for 2 semesters now, both in the spring and fall semesters of this academic year. Presente works with Latino high school students and gives them a space to ask for help on homework, receive support from mentors, and get connected with internships and job opportunities. Most of the teens are going to school, managing extracurriculars and or a job on top of personal familial struggles. This semester, our course readings really allowed me to reflect on the values of our society, especially when it comes to how we view busyness. I noticed how many of the students often seemed exhausted, especially when I would ask some of them about their day and they would tell me of the many extracurriculars they had to worry about on top of schoolwork, like sports, jobs, volunteering, and so and so. Additionally, they were expected to perform exceptionally, despite the lack of support built into their schools without the Presente program. To many of them, school or employment is the main determinant for success, which reminded me of how I was raised. For many of us students, having a schedule filled to the brim is seen as a good thing. I began to think of how valuable I felt during my junior year of high school, when all I would do was go to school and come back to do homework. It took me a year of being in this cycle before I was forced to ask myself, who am I when I'm not busy? The matter of fact was, I was so fixated on being seen as valuable, I knew close to nothing about myself outside of my straight A's and GPA, outside of the rewards I was given for my work. I came to see my own body as a machine within our education system, and eventually the larger system of capitalism across our nation, rather than a living being. Seeing busyness as the only thing that was valuable for my future kept me from the path of a greater self-realized person for a while, because I tied my value to my work. I have learned now that I inherited this way of thinking from my family and the Latino and female community I grew up with, as many of us have conformed to the US capitalist system in an effort to make the American dream come true, be it ourselves or our future generations. And while the spreading of this mentality is well-intentioned, we have failed to properly recognize what or who the mentality was meant for. One quote from a course reading that really resonated with my observations was from Tricia Hersey in her book Rest is Resistance. She wrote, "Capitalism was created on plantations. The roots of it are violence and theft. We as a culture gloss over this historical truth." In this quote, Hearsay points out the generational rush and exhaustion that has been noted to come at the expense of marginalized people, especially those who are low income and black or brown, and self-realization because we aren't seen as human, but rather machines. Just as it was implemented hundreds of years ago, this fast-paced culture of capitalism affects how we view our bodies today, often found in grind culture, machines instead of living beings with wants and needs. For myself and many of the students, Presente often served as a moment to exist with no strings attached. While part of it had to do with the technical support the staff provided to the students, it also had to do with the caring environment I was constantly exposed to. Not every conversation had to do with work or school material. Most of the time, others found more interest in their shared hobbies, music, passions, and or pastimes, as well as personal stories that would make us laugh or feel emotional. Even in the midst of all the busyness of the program, would always be days when everyone would slow down and reconnect with our creativity through art workshops. Presente had also become a space where I could personally revel in the supportive environment the coordinator created. Even on difficult or busy days, especially in the midst of a time when Latino safety and culture is under threat, Presente and its community often brought fun and meaningful conversations, music, joy, and a comforting presence. I believe Stephanie wanted to say something. Hi, Steph.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I truly appreciated the connections you made with the Presenta students. I every time that you showed up to the sessions, you were ready for anything that the program brought, and having you there and the consistency. I just want you to know that it didn't go unnoticed, and it was clear that you came in with such a genuine desire to not just learn but be present and be there for the students. So that mindset, that positive mindset, really did make a huge impact, not just for me but for the students. And I know you've established great relationships with them, which is so great. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing about your lived experiences with them, for being there to speak to them. That openness and willingness to engage with them is exactly what we're looking for when we have students from Dominican come into the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Up next, here we have Lorena Cardenas with Sergeant Justin Graham at San Rafael Community Police Academy.
Hi everyone. My name's Lorena. I'm a social justice and criminal justice major with a minor in Latino studies. Today, I was supposed to be presenting along with Sergeant Justin Graham from the Center for Police Department, but something came up, so he's out on patrol today. He might pop in, I'm not sure yet. Through my service learning, we worked at the Spanish Community Police Academy. What really stood out to me, I learned that justice is not seen in one way, but instead it's seen differently based off of people's experiences. During this experience, what stood out was how much fear and lack of information affects people, and some participants share that they felt nervous about interacting with police, not because they had done anything wrong, but because they didn't know what to expect or felt unsure due to there being like a language barrier. This was where like I realized that justice isn't about laws or like enforcement. It's more about trust, communication, and understanding. But being a social justice major helped me see like a bigger picture, and this experience gave me the opportunity to see how these ideas can be put into like everyday interactions, especially since the job I want to do is interacting with people. For me, like a real pathway to justice means making it easier for people to access support, like have easier access to support, and making sure they feel safe enough to ask questions or get help. This experience really shaped what I want to do in the future. I plan to work in law enforcement and bring like my social justice perspective into the work, especially since I'll be working with a Latino community and speaking community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorena. Up next, we have Stephanie with Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center.
My name is Stephanie. I am a social justice major, graduating in 10 days. I'm out of here. I did my capstone with Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center, which is a little different from what the service learning has done in the past because I was already interning there. So it just made sense for me to do my capstone with them. What they are is they're an affordable housing corporation. So being partnered with them, I was able to do my capstone on how the high cost of housing are affecting people's sense of identity, culture, and belonging in the community that they call their home. And this project was rather my muse in the sense that it's something I've always been searching for. Like I'm always trying to find myself within, like I find myself within cultures and always trying to belong in places. So like whenever it comes time for me to find myself engaged within different communities, that's like my passion. So my capstone was very much driven by my passion to understand people rather than the system. And I feel like with my project, that's exactly what I did in the sense that for as much as I was the intern working and like talking with the developers and making decisions that will benefit the people, I thought it was also important to connect with the people and kind of like understand how those decisions are, affecting them. And I interviewed 10 people, or was supposed to interview 10 people originally, and ended up interviewing six of them. And each one of them had very much like beautiful stories to tell about how they are, feeling belonged in their neighborhood, what keeps them grounded, which is something, again, like I said, I'm always constantly looking for. So that is how I did my capstone project. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We're all so proud of you and congrats on graduating. Up next, we have Emberly, Diana, Karina with Pedro Moriera at Canal Alliance Tenant Rights Advocacy.
Good afternoon. My name is Pedro Moreira. I'm the Community and Advocacy Coordinator at Canal Alliance. We are a nonprofit based in San Rafael. We are dedicated to empowering the Latino immigrant community in Marin County. When I was thinking about the theme of today's symposium, I think about the people we serve every day and how justice is not just a concept. It's something that we are building together, step by step, sometimes person by person, and having the students working with us was just like that. I stepped toward the justice. I didn't see myself as a supervisor or a host, honestly. I saw myself as a co-educator because this was I think it was a mutual learning experience, at least for me. I hope I The students has learned with me from us as much as we did from them. And in this work, sometimes we see people in some of the hardest moments of their lives. And you want to help everyone every time, but sometimes we can't. Resources are just limited. And after a while, we have here the same stories that once moved you to apply to this job, then you see it just feel like another day at work, right? But it was during our very first community outreach with the students, knocking on doors, interviewing residents, and educating them about their rights as tenants. Something happened on that day that I will never forget. And I'm so thankful to the students to that day. We came across a family who had been struggling to sleep for about a week because of faulty fire alarm, and it sounds small, like something simple, but watching the scene, seeing how something so simple could cause so much stress just because of lack of information, I feel like watching that scene now picked something inside all of us. When we finished the interview and we were heading to the next door, none of one could do just leave them behind. We were already in the corner, moving to a different building, when our sense of community made us turn back. We went back to the family and we stayed with them until we found a solution. And it was during that moment that I reminded exactly why why I have applied to this work. And I remember it reminded us as a whole team something we had perhaps started to forget. What the students brought to Canalize was their energy, their curiosity, their teamwork, and especially for me, they reminded us of our mission and how important our work is. I really hope they took with them is the understanding that advocacy is something personal. Behind every policy that we are advocating for, every ballot, every transcript. There's a human being with a story that deserves to be heard. And pathways to justice are built by people willing to show, and these students show up. Thank you, Diana, Amberly, Karina. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Diana. This semester, I've been doing service learning with Canal Alliance tenant advocacy. For this project, we went out into the community and actually listened to residents directly. We talked with community members about problems they were dealing with in their apartment complexes, things like mold, pest, alarm issues, water leakages, and other concerns that affect their day-to-day lives. This was a really meaningful experience to me because I'm from other community members about what their experiences in their own homes were, was really important. It opened my eyes to how much change is needed in our community, not only for residents, for community change overall, and for landlords to be held accountable and to take care of their tenants that they have. At Canal Alliance, when we weren't doing outreach, we spent time in the office listening to the recordings we collected during outreach. We listened to residents' audios, took notes, and then supported it with transcribing and organizing the information. We also used these theme tags and data tags to understand patterns, what issues were showing up repeatedly across different apartment complexes and different residents. So even though people's situations were different, there were still common themes that kept coming up. One of my biggest takeaways from this experience is that these problems aren't random. They're connected and they're issues people keep dealing with. That's why the transcripts we're creating matter. We're gathering residents' problems and voices so they can be used to support policy change with the city, not just for one building, but for the Canal community at large and other communities, hopefully. Overall, this experience was a great learning opportunity. It helped me connect with my community and understand on a more personal level what on-the-ground advocacy looks like and how much community work is needed to make change. It also showed me that advocacy isn't just talking about problems. It's going out, doing outreach, listening and organizing information, and using the data we collect to help create positive policy change for the community. Overall, it was a really good experience for me to learn from and experience overall.
Thank you, Diana.
I think Diana did a beautiful job of describing exactly what we did, and Pedro really showing the significance of what we're doing. I think I also wanted to just say that I had like a really amazing time being able to like work with the Voces del Canal members and see the work that they do and all the time and all the energy that they put into things and their willingness to be flexible and shift and work with us. And I think that that's one of the things that I enjoyed the most is really like building that community and the collaboration and seeing like that it truly is like a living, breathing project. And like we definitely shifted a little bit and learned from each other and just kind of worked with each other to try to keep doing what we were doing. And I just really appreciated everyone who was involved and the other Dominican students, Diana and Emberly and Pedro and our professors and everything that we were able to work together and learn a lot from everyone. So yeah. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name's Emberly. Pretty much like Karina and Diana mentioned, we helped like translating and transcribing the interviews. And I'm just gonna talk really briefly just because they already mentioned most of the stuff already. But I feel like, well, I'm personally not taking a service class right now or service learning class, but I was introduced to this opportunity and I felt like it really caught my eye because similar to Diana, I am a person who lives in the canal community. So just being able to acknowledge that I can actually help improve my community just by going out and doing like an outreach once a week or like helping in the office to translating these interviews to figure out ways that we can improve living conditions in Canal just really like warmed up my heart because I was like, oh my goodness, I can help my people in so many different ways, more ways that I thought I could, like do it. Throughout this process, I realized, well, living in Canal personally, I didn't realize how much there can be to improve on. I don't know. I just felt like my life is just like normal, like yes, there's some things maybe that like I wish could be better, but it's not like unlivable. But after hearing so many stories about other people when we do outreach, I like began to realize like, oh my days, like so many other people are actually struggling. It's not just me. And I feel like that kind of ties into this whole like social justice and service learning aspect where we are actually trying to improve community and we're actually trying to improve other people around us in the best way that we can by like educating them, which is what we personally do on Fridays, where we not only interview them to like gather data, but we also tell them about like their tenant rights because well, my family are they're immigrants as well, and I feel like because of that, there's like this instilled type of fear that they have where they're like, oh, I can't speak up because either I'm going to get evicted or they're going to increase my rent or there's going to be some sort of consequence. So just being able to be the type of people where we could tell them it doesn't matter about your immigration status. You still have rights as tenants. And if you're not living in the proper living conditions, like you have the right to speak up and you have the right to live in those proper living conditions. I feel like it really connected to myself more in a personal level, more than just like academically. But I feel like that kind of sums up my whole interaction with Canal Alliance and Voces of Fanan. I really enjoyed, similar to what Karina said, like it was honestly just a great opportunity to just being around in the community and hearing other stories and just being able to help out and give a helping hand. So thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you. I'm glad it went well for you guys, and you guys did so many amazing things. Up next, I believe we have Ty and Natalie with AAPI Social Gathering at Vivillon.
My name is Natalie, and this semester my service learning took place at Vivillon with AAAM. So AAAM stands for Asian American Alliance of Marin, and they're a nonprofit organization focused on promoting racial equity and celebrating Asian American culture, as well as other communities through education and civic engagement. So every Thursday, we attended the social gatherings where most of the participants were part of the AAPI community. I think that one of the most meaningful aspects of this experience was the strong sense of community that existed within the space. From the very first day, they shared food with us every week, activities and experiences of their past. Though it's vulnerable, it was very nice to see how open they were. It was more of like these interactions because it was kind of a cultural expression of care and inclusion. One prominent concept that I noticed was equity and access. Most of the community members didn't speak English fluently, but they were still actively engaging by using apps like Google Translate or just by practicing with us. This showed me how barriers like language can affect access to resources, and social connection. But at the same time, AAAM works to reduce these barriers. An example that I saw during my time there was when someone brought their mail that they might not have understood due to the language barrier, and then they asked one of the coordinators for help. This was further demonstrating how community organizations can play a critical role in bridging gaps. Overall, I enjoyed my time at AAAM so much, though I thought I'd be helping them more. I ended up learning a lot and meeting great individuals.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. Ty?
Hi guys, my name's Ty. I'm a sophomore 2 nursing major and applied kinesiology minor. And along with Nat, I was at AAAM this semester. Service learning reminded me a lot of high school, as I was very involved in the community, like via clubs. But that was something that I feel that is rare among nursing majors since we don't necessarily have community service focused opportunities like this outside of like our clinical, but it wasn't anything like our service learning. Over the past few months, I've really gotten to know Kat, Dr. Tran, and the seniors at AAAM, and it's given me a chance to reconnect with my culture as I'm half Filipino and half Vietnamese. Many of the seniors were of Vietnamese heritage, and hearing the language and sharing traditional food is something I don't get often besides at my grandma's. It was also a joy to interact with the non-AAPI members as well. One of the Spanish-speaking seniors often enjoyed playing games with me as I could help translate for her and explain the rules of whatever game we were playing, whether it be Mahjong, Quirkle, or Uno. These interactions reminded me of home as a majority of the community members I grew up around were native Spanish speakers. Overall, I'm thankful for the opportunity, and this experience taught me firsthand the importance of the service learning program at Dominican, encouraging students to look beyond our coursework and towards the impact we can have on our
Thank you so much, Ty. Up next, we have Sienna with Dance Art Community Project, and who's presenting her capstone.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Sienna, and I will be talking a little bit about my capstone. I worked with the Dance Arts Community Project since my freshman year at Dominican, and currently am doing my senior capstone in collaboration with them. So the title of my capstone is Dance as a Developmental Tool for Language. And I looked at this through my research question of how can dance lead to a development of verbal and nonverbal expression or communication skills across cultural and linguistic barriers. So the Dance Arts Community Project, which is my service learning partner that I work with, is a nonprofit organization located in Marin and focused on equitable access to culturally meaningful dance forms. A lot of their focus is on how can we provide access, how can we get the most students to get the most positive experience from our classes. And we have a lot of emerging bilinguals in our program. So we have currently two main class locations. We've branched out to some other places in the past, but currently we have classes at our downtown studio in downtown San Rafael, as well as classes at the Alboro Community Center in San Rafael. And so throughout those different classes, a lot of our students are learning a second language. So whether that is they are native Spanish speakers and they're learning English, or they are native English speakers or they're learning Spanish. And we also have a number of students who speak indigenous languages. And so my research is a lot about how can our class be the most equitable for these different students, and how can they take the most from this program, but also about how dance itself can be a language barrier breaker and how they can express bodily, even if there may be a verbal language barrier. So for my project, I developed a curriculum for the class with help from my supervisor and some other people involved in our program, in order to create the best experience for my students and try to put in some of these techniques that worked the best, to help the students connect across linguistic barriers as well as help them learn more verbal and physical language. So for this, I had classes of children ages 4 to 10, for a once a week, 6 week long program. And this was kind of this assessment that I created of how to make the best program, came from conversations with parents and colleagues, as well as interviews. So I interviewed some other staff members and service learners who work with dance arts, as well as some other parents and community members. And from that, I then made an expression assessment table, which basically assessed how well the students were progressing in the class, if I was noticing them getting more comfortable in the space after they'd been in our program for a little while, or noticing them getting more expressive overall, maybe noticing them pick up more words in something that wasn't their first language. Through these, I had a couple of key findings. Mostly it was around separation and connection between physical language and verbal language. So a lot of people saw that dance was a language barrier breaker, and using the body as an expression through imagery. So we do that a lot with our students, especially the younger ones, as well as a piece on verbal language. So for both the student and teacher, there's a mutual growth of verbal language in class because if the teacher, for example, their first language is English and they're now learning some more Spanish as they're teaching some of their class in Spanish, or one of my coworkers, her first language is Spanish, but she teaches her class bilingually because all of our classes are taught that way. And she mentioned that she feels like her English is improving a lot from doing that teaching. So yeah, that's the framing basically of the way my capstone was developed. And then the end piece is that I came up with some recommendations for continuing this class and kind of what pieces we felt like worked the best and what things we felt like the students responded to most, and am creating a community deliverable to give to my supervisor and other people who work in my program so that they continue this work.
Thank you, Sienna. That sounds wonderful. Jaylee, Sydney, Adriana, and Martinez with San Pedro Elementary School.
Hey, my name is Jaylee, and I'm a sophomore. I'm currently majoring in political science and history, but minoring in pre-law and music. My main focus was transportation and justice. My service learning partner was the San Pedro Elementary School, and we worked directly with the third, fourth, and fifth grade students. I think the challenge that was always most visible whenever we got to San Pedro is the transportation options the kids have. For our class on April 15th, we had to read an article regarding the transportation injustices many people face due to a lack of good infrastructures that make it so that there is equal transportation. A majority of the San Pedro kids live in the canal area of San Rafael. The canal is a geographical basin area with limited access. A highway runs through the community, and the streets are always filled with non-eco-friendly cars. The only public transit available to residents are limited to city buses, school buses, and limited bike paths. San Pedro Elementary School is located in a wealthier part of San Rafael and is 10 to 15 minutes away from the canal, sometimes more with heavy traffic. For a lot of these students, they only have the option to take the school bus to school, and many of these children have to wake up at early hours and wait outside in the cold while car fumes hit them from the traffic. This is unfair to the kids because they are forced to be outside with polluted air that could affect their health in the near future. There should be more eco-friendly options for these kids as they are so young and could have major side effects from the pollution. My main question to this problem is, why is there no transit system that goes all the way towards San Pedro Elementary School? The area is far away, and yet the transit buses don't go to this more wealthier side of San Rafael. Our transportation system is unjust since it is not accommodating to people of all backgrounds and segregates them to areas where environmental hazards are more prominent. Advocacy and change should be made because everyone has the right to travel where they want to go, especially when it comes to necessities like school.
Hi, I'm Sydney Norwood, and I'm a freshman communications major. And I'm going to be specifically talking about housing injustice. So I'm going to be reading a little reflection of like my biggest takeaways from this class. So the environmental justice issue that became visible during my community engagement art sessions was housing justice. Through my conversations with third and fourth grade students, I learned that overcrowding is common in the Canal neighborhood. In one session, all the students at my table mentioned that they lived near one another and they shared details about who lived in their homes. I noticed that their households were large and that many extended family members, like cousins, aunts, and uncles, lived nearby. One kid said that their cousin lived across the street, and then another kid said their cousin lived down the hall in the same apartment complex. Nearly 46.9% of households in the canal are overcrowded, meaning that too many people are living in a limited space. I also learned that housing in Marin is especially expensive. Many residents of the canal are low-income renters whose incomes do not match Marin's high cost of living. As a result, those living in the canal are more likely to experience overcrowding due to limited housing and unaffordable prices. Within Marin, the Canal neighborhood is considered one of the more affordable areas, even though it is still expensive by broader standards. This is because the location puts residents at risk of environmental issues such as pollution from the nearby freeway, flooding from the bowl-shaped terrain, and climate change impacts. At the same time, it became clear that the Canal community is deeply family-oriented and that neighbors support one another, highlighting both their resilience and a meaningful cultural asset. My service experience with elementary kids makes the housing and environmental justice ideas I learned in class come alive because these kids are living them.
Hi everyone, my name is Adriana Martinez, and I'm going to be reading a small reflection of my experience at San Pedro Elementary School. So, in one of our readings, we learned how marginalized communities are rarely seen with green spaces because of the way that it was formed, specifically through environmental racism. The Canal community has more buildings than green spaces, and there's only one public park in the neighborhood. So this means that money has gone to buildings and other infrastructure rather than green space, which is something that all residents deserve. And the times that we went to San Pedro, I noticed the improvements that they have made over time with green space. The playgrounds look different. The field is new, the one that they have right now, and before it almost was just classrooms. So when I was looking, I realized that the need for playgrounds and nature in both schools and neighborhoods is so important for the health and well-being of all children. The lack of it comes from the history of discriminatory decisions, and some of those which made San Pedro like that could have been due to the lack of funding. So now that there have been several developments to the school, such as like having a vegetable garden and having a small small greenhouse. And the school even organized a trip to Muir Woods recently. The campus has improved a lot, and you would think that green space justice has been served. However, I believe that there should be more green space despite the improvements already made. As you may already know, like almost all of the students that go to San Pedro Elementary School are from the Canal neighborhood. Open spaces and parks are so close to the area, but because of urban planning, they are on the other side of the freeway, which makes Canal pretty isolated, and residents face multiple barriers in accessing those parks. So, from the artwork that we did, specifically the portrait that's shown on the screen, the students got to choose the images, and seeing a lot of the flowers and animals tells me that they feel a connection and appreciation to nature. So it's really important to speak up about green space because it's what the children are growing up with, and they should have the right to be able to grow up physically and emotionally healthy.
Do we have one more student that will be presenting?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, Kiani.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiani Neal. My capstone project explores the Black Asian solidarity in the Bay Area with a focus on Marin County. So my research asks, what does Black Asian solidarity look like at the local level, and what makes cross-racial coalition building actually work? So you may be wondering why this matters. Well, communities of color in the U.S. often face shared struggles like racism and lack of access to resources, but those struggles are often experienced separately. Because of that, building solidarity across communities isn't automatic, it takes work. So my project is grounded in my service learning experience. I worked with two organizations, one being APSC, which is the Asian Prisoner Support Committee, and then another being AAAM, which is the Asian American Alliance of Marin. So through this work, I helped organize community events, support intergenerational gatherings, and engage directly with both Black and Asian community members. This experience helped shape my research and gave me real insight into how coalition building happens on the ground. So for this specific research, I conducted 3 semi-structured interviews, and I analyzed these interviews using thematic analysis, looking for patterns in how people talked about solidarity, trust, and collaboration. So within my findings, I found 4 main things. One being trust. So trust is not automatic. It has to be built, especially in communities with histories of tension. 2 being relationships. So strong coalitions come from consistent long-term relationships, not one-time events. And then 3, structural barriers. These were things like funding competition and language access and generational differences that make collaboration harder. And my fourth and final one being cultural and storytelling. So this would be shared meals, cultural events, and storytelling help break down barriers and build more connection. So, what makes Marin County unique? One important takeaway is that Marin County is different from places like Oakland. This is because it's more suburban, so communities are more spread out. There are fewer shared spaces, and coalition building requires more intentional effort. So, solidarity doesn't just happen, you have to actively create it and create spaces for it. Throughout this, my positionality, I also saw how important trust and relationships are in research itself. As someone that's been working across different communities, I had to build relationships over time, show up consistently, and earn trust before people felt comfortable sharing their experiences with me. So that process helped shape both my research and my understanding of coalition building. So overall, my research shows that Black Asian solidarity is possible, but it's not automatic. It requires time, trust, and intentional relationship building. And most importantly, it shows that local community based work is where real coalition building happens. So, with that moving forward, I hope to continue this work through community organizing, advocacy, and supporting spaces that bring people together across differences. Because strong coalitions are essential for creating real social and political change. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you all for coming, for all the presenters who gave wonderful presentations. I look forward to seeing your guys' work out there. Bye, everybody.